For most traditional football clubs, spending is viewed as a simple equation. You invest capital, and you systematically improve the squad. Chelsea opted to diverge from this pattern, treating the transfer market as a testing ground for a different theory. The project tested whether a specific threshold of wealth, £1 billion, could eventually compensate for a lack of traditional athletic strategy. The club conducted this trial in real time, using the active transfer windows as a laboratory. The systematic nature of a typical front office gave way to a relentless cycle of signing announcements. This functioned as a completely uncontrolled live-action science experiment, conducted before a global audience. The club's methodology in the transfer market mirrored a starving person running through a supermarket. In this environment, every available player appeared to be an urgent, necessary bargain. This chart tracks the resulting breakdown in roster math. The club acquired a left winger, followed immediately by a second and then a third. They introduced further volatility into the experiment by committing to unprecedented 8-year deals. These massive financial commitments were frequently awarded to teenagers with almost zero professional experience. The primary tactic behind these moves was the act of purchasing itself, rather than any underlying football philosophy. The project eventually collided with the principle of diseconomies of scale, where the roster mutated in size while the actual quality of play remained stagnant. This schematic shows a roster that expanded so rapidly it began to mirror the population density of a small municipality. The internal confusion grew until fans, media, and even the coaching staff struggled to identify the primary squad. Standard athletic planning was replaced by the kind of logistical coordination usually reserved for military operations. Basic team functions reached a point of mathematical failure. Transporting the roster required an entire fleet of public transportation. This billion-pound investment resulted in paralyzing organizational bloat that made normal football operations nearly impossible. The results phase of the case study reveals the empirical impact of this spending on the league table. Clubs operating on a fraction of the budget systematically outpaced the billion-pound roster. This scatterplot of points per million pounds illustrates the failure of the hypothesis, positioning the club as a massive financial outlier. Other organizations relied on smart recruitment and coaching, while this model produced a disconnected and expensive collection of individual assets. The defining mystery of the season shifted into a purely forensic exercise, as spectators searched for where the £1 billion actually manifested on the pitch. These outcomes triggered a psychological loop, where every summer is framed as a completely fresh project. Each of these fresh starts immediately prompts another massive and chaotic shopping spree. The act of rebuilding now functions as the permanent fixed identity of the organization. Until the club stops running the experiment long enough to observe their own players, they will never discover what their actual team is. The $1 billion test continues.